I would love to introduce the chair of the Montana Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, Courtney Brown Kibblewhite. And she is a Montana native, and everyone is familiar with Northern News Network. And we're thrilled to have Courtney as the chair of the Montana Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. Courtney Kibblewhite.
Thank you very much, Todd. Excited to be here today, and I'm not sure if they selected me to lead this panel because I have an international husband or because I worked illegally internationally as an underwater photographer for a summer. I'm not really sure why, but no, excited to be here today and talk to these excellent manufacturers here in Montana. And we only have 30 minutes and 4 very interesting personalities, so we'll get right to it. To start off, I'm going to ask each of them to tell us a little bit about their company and about the product they produce before we jump into exactly what their engagement is overseas or across the land. So let's go ahead. We'll start at the end. Will Schmautz, if you'd go ahead. Did I say that right?
Very close. Thank you.
Okay, very close. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks for the time. Thanks for the opportunity. Nomad Global Communication Solutions was founded just over 20 years ago to design, engineer, and manufacture what we call connected mobile operation centers. Fundamentally, it's essentially trucks and trailers that are custom built to our customers' mission specificity. Basically, every unit that we craft has an onboard operating system, a vehicle automation system, which is also crafted by Nomad. We work primarily, I'd say 60% of our business in the defense sector. So we work a lot in aircraft ammunition development. They're essentially mobile engineering labs. We also do a lot of work in the kind of defense 5G experimental space. Maybe another 20% of our business goes towards public safety, kind of command and control. We work with almost all the big federal agencies, the FBI, FAA. We do work with the Corps of Engineers, and then the balance of the business we do is really geared towards utility and telecommunications, so mobile cell sites, mobile high capacity electrical line inspection work. But in the grand scheme, basically Nomad is building these truck and trailer products and then selling them both in the continental United States and then across the world.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Will. Next, I'd like to introduce Becky Spica, who's the Vice President and Director of Sales for Spica Design and Manufacturing.
Thank you. So Spica Design and Manufacturing is a company in Lewistown. We're a women-owned and family-owned small business, and we actually started about 20 years ago as well to just provide jobs for our neighbors. People in our area are all ranchers and farmers, and there just weren't enough jobs, there wasn't enough money going around in that industry to support everybody. So the intention was to hang out with your neighbors all day and give them a good job that they could be proud of. And Mom at one point said, if we ever get to 8 employees, I don't know what we're gonna do. It's just too many. And now we have 60, so we grew. And what we make is mobile access platforms. So we partner with innovators to get them to their upper level needs during manufacturing and maintenance needs. So if you're building an aircraft or a spacecraft, you might need something that can be height adjustable and move in and out, and then do some reconfiguration to accommodate different points on the aircraft or different testing needs. So we do things as small as a step stool. I wouldn't say those are profitable, but we go all the way up to something. Lately, we worked for NASA on a project that ended up being 33 feet tall at its max height. We actually had to build it in the hangar in Lewistown because it wouldn't fit in our facility. It was about 25 feet by 25 feet in footprint, had about, I think, 8 feet of vertical travel, and it was supporting the testing and integration of a servicing payload for the OSM-1 program. So we've been growing into a lot of custom work, but we do also do things with aircraft maintenance stands and other more COTS items.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, next I'll introduce Pete Smith, who's the president of HCR Incorporated.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. HCR, horizontal curvilinear recirculatory. So if you've been to a Costco or a Sam's Club and gone to the produce or dairy cooler in the back of the store, You'll walk through an opening that's 10 foot wide, probably 7 foot tall, with no door. And if you walk inside and turn around and look, you'll see it's made in Lewistown, Montana. So we make air doors. We got into the business doing engineered vestibules for cold food storage and processing. So all like 40-some distribution centers in North America at Walmart have our engineered vestibules that go on freezers. And that's what got us into the market. We're not the $1,200 downblast air curtain you get from Grainger or McMaster or Carr. We're truly an engineered vestibule. And I got to share a little funny story. So this gal beside me, I know her pretty well. See, we moved to Lewistown from Virginia, Northern Virginia area, like 32 years ago. And Tom Spica was our first employee. And he ran our production facility for about 10 years. He claims I fired him. I claim he abandoned me. But anyway, we go way back. So it's a horizontal flow air curtain. It recirculates the air, and it's a curvilinear design across the opening. So that's what we do.
Excellent, thank you. All right, and finally, I'll introduce Brian Wood, who's the president of Wood's Power Grip, and Brian has served on the Montana Chamber Board with me the last 5 or 6 years. So go ahead, Brian. And he's also been, I guess, identified as one of the best manufacturers in the room. So this is the Brian Wood, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Shane. Woods Power Grip is a small manufacturing facility based out of Laurel, and we employ about 130 people. It was started by my grandfather, actually, in 1964. Our specialty is equipment for materials handling, and within that materials handling world, we specialize in vacuum gripping devices for primarily for handling smooth, non-porous surfaces. So our biggest industry is the glass industry. Pretty much all the glass that you see that's been installed anywhere, they used one of our products to get it there. So that's our niche in the world.
All right, well, I'd love to dig into exactly what countries that your businesses export to, and how did those relationships develop? Many of you have gone back many years, so maybe we'll start with you, Brian. What countries do you guys export to at Woods Power Grip?
Well, we normally export about 30 to 35% of our overall products, and that's been pretty steady for, and I say normally, probably about 20 plus years. It's just been in that ratio there. And we export pretty much to all the industrialized countries. Basically, we make a product that's designed for making lifting safer and easier, but it comes at a cost. So those countries that have less developed safety cultures and inexpensive labor just aren't good markets for us, of course. Our biggest market is Europe. We have a good distribution network throughout Western Europe, but we also sell to, like say all the industrialized countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Japan, UAE. We have distribution in all those areas. So I think I heard you say challenges.
How those relationships develop. So I know you've got a multi-generational family business as well. Were you guys always working and exporting internationally, or at what point did the international market come into play?
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. Obviously we're kind of a niche product, and so we developed our brand and our reputation within the United States, and we were very fortunate in that we had some reputable distributors in other countries, Europe and Australia and a few others early on, come and talk to us about potentially selling into their regions, and so that's clear back in the 70s and 80s that we started exporting to some of those countries, and it's just kind of expanded from there. So
thank you. Excellent. All right, back to you, Pete. Tell us, what countries do you guys export to, and how did those relationships develop?
Okay, I was pretty proud of the quantity until Tal started mentioning 26 countries. Now we export to probably 23. And there's some problems. We have an engineered solution. You can't see the air, and how it's adjusted, how it's balanced is very subjective. So technical translation is a real problem. You can translate all kinds of things on the internet and Microsoft Word, but technical translations don't do well. So it's been a challenge. And we've got overseas mainly because when you sell to Walmart or Mars or M&M Mars and different people like that, and they have a company in Russia and they want your product, you sell to it. Getting it installed and started correctly is a challenge. So we don't really look forward to it, but it happens.
All right, Becky, similar question. Is it multiple countries for you guys?
Yeah, we have about 10 countries that we're in, plus a few, I think I'm missing some. Some of them I wouldn't count as exporting because they're on United States military bases, but I still do count them as being part of the global presence. So we have agents for Japan and Israel. We do FMS work with Australia and Turkey, and we have some United States OEMs that have brought our product to their other sites in Mexico and then in South America. If we get any kind of direct sale as an export, it does come in, I'd say, oftentimes inbound-wise. So if it's not foreign military sales, which we are pursuing actively, it would just be an email, a website inquiry, and we work with Canada that way and figure out the details there. So that's our overview.
All right, Will, go ahead.
Up until my freshman year of high school, I had not made it past Canada. In fact, British Columbia. I'm a fourth generation Flathead Valley resident. My parents carted us off to West Africa in Nigeria for much of my high school years, and during that time I became just deeply interested in world affairs and what my place in that might be. When we started Nomad, we basically always had an idea that the product offerings we would have would likely be really well suited for the rest of the world. The U.S., of course, is one of the strongest infrastructure countries. Today, we basically export into the Middle East, East Asia, South Pacific. We have some work down in Central America, Northern Africa through the UN is one of our current developing targets. But we see just great opportunity for Nomad products throughout the world.
So question, I guess, anyone on the panel there, where do you see additional opportunity, maybe further from where you are currently throughout the world? Are there locations that you're targeting to get your product or to develop relationships right now? Nothing top of mind? I guess I'm wondering, are these like long-term relationships with people that you've developed over years and years and it's always going back to the same company, or are there emerging markets that you're looking to target?
For Spica, we have an access system for electric bus rooftop access, which is something that a lot of people with being required now to transition over to zero emissions. I think there's a ton of opportunity for us in Asia and also in Europe. So those are things that are currently on our radar.
At Nomad, we have a very complex kind of international marketing strategy, which is put a website up and see who responds to it. And that's been a big piece of kind of our program, is we have just been responsive. As we basically continue to mature as a company, we're, again, a little over 20 years today, and it sometimes feels like I don't know anything, but as we continue to mature, our strategy will be a lot more kind of disciplined. And I think it was noted earlier, right, that distribution networks are so critical to be successful overseas. And I think that that's been a big piece of what we have lacked to really kind of access the opportunity, is getting a good, solid distribution network.
So Pete mentioned one of the main challenges that he's experiencing being the language and technical literacy across borders. What are other challenges that have emerged? Maybe if you want to say anything else on that, Pete, and then we'll go to Brian next, I guess.
Yeah. Well, what's very important for us is to have a partner in a country, and that's where we've been successful. And to answer the question you asked of us now, we're looking at getting more into Europe. We have an awful lot in South America and Asia, of course, North America and Central America. So we do have a partner. Actually, they bought our company a few years ago in Italy. So we're looking at getting more involved with Europe. And then what was your...
Just any other challenges, I guess,
Yeah.
that you're experiencing with the international markets?
Our product is very expensive. I mean, a comparable product for something you can buy with, well, from Grainger, MasterCard, theirs is $1,200, ours would be $12,000. So everybody in Europe is way smarter than us in the U.S. So if we go in and try to sell an engineered product for an awful lot of money, it's a real challenge. So it's normally corporate driven from a company in the U.S. And that's how we get the purchases. And then we have a partner in the country that can do the installation and service and correspond with us. That's how we're successful.
And is that partner an American, or is that somebody locally?
Well, to date, it's been, well, both, a combination of both.
Interesting. Great. Brian.
So we're kind of in the same boat as Pete, you know, finding the right companies to partner with, because those distributors they become kind of an extension of your business. You rely on them for, you know, for all your service, to be the face of your product in that country, and it can be difficult to find that right fit. And as you go into different regions, distribution networks are set up differently. The network we use within the U.S. is very well defined, and we're finding, or we have found, that similar situation in Europe. But as you go into maybe Latin America and places like that, it's harder to find a distributor that really would represent our product the way we want it in the industries that we want, and be able to provide the type of service and that we need to have in order to have a long-term product in that region. But I mean, challenges, gosh, we could spend this whole half hour talking about challenges. I mean, like you say, instructions. Who hasn't bought a product, got it home and pulled out the instructions, and it didn't make sense because they translated it in Google or whatever, and that goes through to all your labels and your, anything on your product has to be translated. And if that product's going into multiple countries, now you got to try and use these stupid little emblems that don't mean anything to anyone, but you got to try and figure it out and get the appropriate symbol for each button or whatever. But I mean, it goes beyond that. I mean, there's just the regular regulations for each country. Like we have ANSI standards. You go into Europe, it's EC, and now of course UK broke off, so they have a whole nother set of standards. Australia's got different standards, and you got to have somebody on staff that's keeping track of that, as well as your partners in those countries have to keep you up to date on changes that are going on there that are going to affect your product. So I mean, that's just there's time barriers. You can't send somebody an email and expect to get a response an hour later. There's language barriers. You need the help of your partners in those countries to help you through those things as well. Like I say, the challenges, we could definitely spend the whole time talking about those.
You get it. All right, so we'll go to Becky and then Will. Any challenges beyond the language that we've been talking about that you'd like to highlight?
I guess, Brian, the compliance part of things and regulations, that is huge for us right now. We have an opportunity to potentially have an access system that's really, really tiny, like 30 inches long and 17 inches wide, to go into data centers around the world. And I'm not even sure how our product is classified in some of these nations, and it's a safety product, so you have to make sure you have all of that in place. And even working with Canada, across the board, they have different requirements too, we're finding. So compliance is huge for us right now. And then I guess just one other lesson that we learned is Israel takes a month off for a vacation, and don't ship anytime around then, because everything will be delayed. And that was an important lesson.
Note to self. Great. Will, any other challenges?
Yeah, they're similar. For Nomad, one of the things that makes us fairly unique is we build very customized solutions for our customers, and they usually include dozens of technologies that are usually restricted in some way, shape, or form by ITAR. So each country, right, we have to basically kind of get over that hurdle with every one of those technologies. And so some of the lessons basically that you learn in one country can be applied to the next, but many can't. And so you're constantly learning and having to guess ahead of time whether or not you'll be able to figure out all the restrictions before you need to ship.
Well, we were talking in the previous panel with film about the Montana brand and what that means to people. I have to tell a funny story. I was in Florida a few weeks ago, and my Uber driver, I said I was from Montana, and she said, "Oh, I've been to Montana, and oh, Montana's so beautiful." Of course, you talked about the landscape, and I expected that, and then she said, "But the thing about Montanans," I was like waiting for it. Okay, they're so beautiful. And I was like, "Are you serious? I've lived out of state 12 years, and I've never had somebody tell me how beautiful Montanans were." And then it got around to, well, we don't have everything fake everywhere, and so I understood it. But so we're authentic as Montanans. I'd love to continue to portray that stereotype that we're also very beautiful. So everyone talk about that. But as we look to these international markets, what does the Montana brand help you? How do you get that feedback from the different markets and folks that you interact with internationally, realizing that, as you said, as Will just said, there's 26, 28 different countries. They all probably have a slightly different impression. So what comes to mind in terms of that Montana brand for each of your different businesses? Maybe Becky, do you mind if we start with you?
Yeah, I guess I feel like pretty generally everybody's excited to come to Montana. They feel like it's trustworthy, down to earth. The Montana cachet, the handshake is your word kind of thing. So for our company, we have a reliable product, a quality product. We stand behind it. So we definitely do find some benefit there in that complementary, branding of the state and what we're trying to brand our company as well.
Great. Will?
I think that I don't know who actually owns the responsibility for the quote that, right, people buy emotionally but justify rationally, that people think of Montana as a very rugged place. When I see some of the temperatures that the Midwest gets, I'm kind of wondering why they think of us that way. But the reality of it is that we are perceived like that, and that's a big part of our product offering deals with reliability. So rugged and reliability go together, and so we think that that's a real bonus. Although specifically, right, our international customers, it's hard to get to Montana, and a lot of folks, because these are high dollar, highly complex products, they want to come and see our capabilities, and it takes a very significant investment of time to get to Montana.
Has that played out as a disadvantage? Or do they meet the challenge no matter how far or how many flights?
On balance, I'm not sure yet. I would say that people try really hard to come, but our customers are very, very busy, especially in the current geopolitical climate and the amount of time it takes to come and visit. Oftentimes they're just taking things on faith, which again, I think we built a very trustworthy brand, so that works well, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I like living where I live.
Think about all of your companies are brand ambassadors for the state in that sense. Pete, we'll go to you.
I try to be quick and share a funny story. It's hard to get to Montana, obviously, and when you do get to people here, they really enjoy it. I brought a business owner up about 10 years ago. He's from Venezuela, and it happened to snow. And actually Israel, we brought some Israel people over, and it happened to snow, and they were going to see the state, and they sat at our house, and we heated our cook stove, and they just loved it, the snow. But anyway, so this Venezuela guy with his patent leather shoes, I have an airplane at my house, and I was going to fly him back to Billings, catch his flight, and my wife was out there shoveling in front of the hangar so we could get the airplane out. And he was just amazed that my wife would be out shoveling snow so I could fly him to catch his flight. So there's challenges. A bigger challenge is it's a long way to a port, and all our products, just like Spica's, they're large, and you got to put them on semis. And if you got to get it to a port so it can get on a boat to go somewhere else, it's really expensive. That's the only downside. People love Montana.
Awesome. Brian, how about you?
Yeah, to Will's point, I think if you for certain products, it it's an advantage. Maybe agricultural products, anything Western wear, Western lifestyle associated. I'm sure Yellowstone's been dubbed into other languages by now, and so they recognize Montana if they're buying certain things. For us, not so much, but fortunately, and I don't know, if everybody's found this to be the truth or not, but made in the USA still has a very positive connotation as far as good quality, you have distributors who take pride in the fact that they carry American-made products. For us, we deal with professional tradespeople, or we're selling into fabricating factories that, they're willing to spend a little bit more for a good quality product that they know they can get service on. So, like I say, made in the USA still has some value for us. Maybe, because of the type of product and industry we're in, made in Montana doesn't carry quite as much weight,
We highlighted advantages here, but as we wrap up, curious, are there any disadvantages that you've run into with our brand, or things that we collectively need to work on, perhaps even at the Montana Chamber level, of how do we, are there things that we need to overcome and not be blind to? That's a question, well, if anybody has a gut question to that.
Just to build on what Pete and some of the others have said, obviously we don't have an international airport, so it is more of an ordeal to not only bring in people, but to travel and explore other markets and stuff. It's more time consuming, more expensive than it might be from other areas. You don't have a port close by, so everything's got to ship overland, so that adds time and that adds expense to exports. It's hard to get containers at times, where if you're close to a port, obviously that would be a little easier to do. So all those things kind of factor in as well.
I sat on the Aero board in the Flathead Valley for a little while, where we worked really hard to kind of improve, air access to the Flathead. And it was like this double-edged sword, right? Where the things we need to perform better as a business were also the things that were going to change the flavor of the Flathead. And so I think on balance, I'm not sure how I feel about this one either, but in the grand scheme, I think that the things that keep Montana a little bit remote are actually good. And I think that the reason that we have the workforce that we do have is because they want to live in a place that's different from everywhere else. And so I guess I feel like the disadvantages of access, and they are real, right? Our shipping costs are nuts. But they lend themselves to a better place to live, a better workforce, and a better perception of what we do.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much. I know that the governor is here. I guess we'll move on to the governor. Are there any burning questions from the audience, I guess, before we head that way? Tom.
No, I can get off the ground in 2,000 feet.
Yeah, the women here are rugged too, in case you're wondering. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Please give a warm hand to Will, Becky, Pete, and Brian.